entrepreneurship is a very lonely path because your team, they're not your best friends. They're not there to listen to your business problems. You're there to solve and have them help in whatever you're trying to accomplish. You solve one problem, then you solve the next problem, then you solve the next problem. And if you solve enough problems, you get to come home. Where I see many companies fail is the lack of communication of like why we exist, where are we at today, how did we get here, and where are we going? It's the distillation of those concepts that are generally held at the leadership team level and the ability to communicate throughout the entire organization.
Hello and welcome to another episode of Better Business, Better Life. I'm your host, Deborah Chantry-Taylor, and I'm passionate about helping entrepreneurs lead their ideal lives by creating better businesses. I'm a certified EOS implementer and accredited family business advisor, and I work with business owners and their leadership teams to help them put in place a simple set of pragmatic tools that will improve their business so they can improve their life. I started this podcast to bring on board people who have been on the entrepreneurial journey to share their highs and lows, share what worked, what didn't work, and just hopefully create an environment where you can listen and think, yes, that's me. And maybe there is hope for where I'm headed. So today's guest is a great one for this. He has been through a bankruptcy. He has grown a business from 0 to 55 million in 6 years. And he has had a number of businesses and roles that include creepy crawlies, zombies, and helicopters, combined with 23 years in the Navy. Today, he's going to share with you how failure is not the end, it's just the beginning. How the whole if you build it, they will come is definitely not a given. And how to scale your business successfully using EOS and other tools. Ryan Hogan is a serial entrepreneur. He was the founder of Hunt a Killer, and he is now the CEO of Talent Harbour. And quite frankly, he's an all-round good, fun guy. Hey, welcome to the show, Ryan. It's great to have you here.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Deborah. Really excited about this one.
I'm really looking forward to it because we've just done a little bit of talking before the show, but also we've talked in the past. I know you've got this most amazing kind of history and very, very diverse. So let's get started and let's have a bit of a chat around who is Ryan, what is he doing, and how on earth did he get to where he is now?
Yeah. And that's actually like a funny story because today I'm in the recruiting business and like what we found before I got into this business, and I found this out through personal experience, is like the recruiting industry is broken. But like before this, I had a murder mystery company, and before that, I had a zombie company, and before that, I had a t-shirt company, and way before all of that stuff, I was selling creepy crawlers in Mrs. Price's third grade class before she shut me down. And so, like my span has been this just weird, amazing, interesting, fun journey of entrepreneurship and solving hard problems with brilliant people. And then simultaneous to that, it's been the United States Navy. And so I was a lost kid. If you look at my high school transcript, it was all, we called them E's, but my mom was always like, they're called F's. And so basically my whole senior year was all F's except for one D. And I needed that D to get credit to graduate. And I was just lost. Like I had energy, I had passion, conviction, I had all those things, but I had no discipline and I had no focus. And so the Navy for me, my mom signed the permission slip at 17 years old. And I shipped off to boot camp. I spent 10 years flying on helicopters. That's my flight helmet behind me. And ultimately got a commissioning, 5 years as a surface warfare officer. And then after 15 years, I transitioned into the reserves. And now I've been doing the reserves for the last 8 years.
Yeah, see, that's just fascinating. So you were an entrepreneur early on, though. You said you were selling what creepy crawlies in the classroom before you got shut down. I'm really interested to know because I was one of these kids who was actually like super, super bright, but was always in trouble in the classroom. Yeah, always made to stand in the corner, made to kind of leave the room because I was disruptive, and I didn't understand at the time what was going on. I just couldn't understand why I was always getting in trouble because I was getting the good grades. I just couldn't sit still in class. So my teachers had a view of me, and it wasn't a very pleasant one because I was too disruptive. What did they say about you in class? How were you described?
Yeah, I mean, pretty much that. Like, if you look at all the comments, like growing up, it was like class clown, doesn't shut up, won't turn his chair around, talks to everybody. The difference between you and I is like you were smart, and for me, like I do consider myself pretty intelligent, but not book smart. Like for me to like open up a book and try and like focus on that, it's not that my learning style. Like I learned through just doing it, failing, and then looking at that failure, saying, "Hey, maybe we could have done things different," and then moving on. So yeah, my stuff said the same exact, except our report cards were complete opposites.
Fair enough. I don't know that I was actually, I mean, I love to read. I've always loved to read. I remember reading avidly as a kid, and I do it the same in my adult life as well. But I'm not sure if I was necessarily academic smart. I just had this amazing ability. And I think if I got tested now, there'd be a whole bunch of stuff on spectrum scales and things. But I was able to just take stuff really, really easily, quickly absorb it, join the dots and make it make sense, which, so I didn't actually ever study. I never actually did any revision for exams and things. It was just like, oh, this stuff makes sense. I've got it. But anyway, enough about me. So sorry, zombies. I missed that this was something that just came out in that introduction there. So I knew about the hunter killer. I know that was we're going to talk about that in a moment. But zombies? What?
Zombies. Yeah, and that's like here's the shorter story of what happens. Always entrepreneurship, always kind of like trying to figure out things to sell, things to do. And so I had this t-shirt company and it was called Warwear. And basically the whole premise, or we thought the premise was we were building performance apparel for the war fighters. And, when you look at Under Armour and Nike was just getting into the kind of performance apparel at that point, we were trying to come up with some sort of cost effective solution for the E1s. I was an E5 at the time, but like, the enlisted folks so that they could get high quality performance apparel for working out and gyms and things like that. And that was my very, very tough lesson in if you build it, they don't necessarily come. And what happened with that company is I wound up having a 2-car garage filled to the ceilings with these performance t-shirts. And we were in trouble, and we were in trouble. Like we had taken family money and invested into this, and we were pouring our hearts into it. I was active duty at the time, and we just couldn't move it. So I opened up this magazine, Men's Health, and there was an advertisement in it for the Warrior Dash. And I had just called Men's Health like 4 weeks earlier to ask them how much to advertise my t-shirt company in there. It was like $150,000. And I was like, wow, if this company can afford 150,000 for this ad, then there must be a market here for obstacle course races. And this scene was exploding. It was Warrior Dash, Tough Mudder, Spartan Race. And so I called my childhood friend and I was like, hey, I've got a whole garage full of t-shirts. Why don't you and I start an event company and we'll throw a mud run and obstacle race, 5-kilometer outdoor obstacle course race. And then this company will buy t-shirts from this company and give these t-shirts to participants for free. And that was really the genesis. Like it was just that simple idea, that simple concept. We wound up backing into the notion of zombies. And so we came up with the name Run for Your Lives. And we're like, well, if people are running for their lives, they got to be running from something. And this was 2009 when The Walking Dead, 2010-ish, when The Walking Dead was just getting started. And so we were like, cool. Well, we're going to have them run from zombies. They're going to put on a flag football belt. It's going to have 3 flags dangling. And we're going to have zombies chasing them, trying to grab their flags. And if they can get through the whole post-apocalyptic themed obstacle course with at least 1 flag belt, then they have survived and they get a cool medal. And if not, then they still get a cool medal, but that one is a zombie medal because they have
No,
died.
zombie.
Yeah,
I fucking love
that's
it. I love it.
Yeah.
Brilliant. Okay, cool. So I take it because it looks from your thing here, you did that for almost 6 years. So it turned around and you managed to get it back into a healthy shape, or what happened?
Is this the zombie
The
run?
warwear. No, the warwear.
Oh, Warwear.
Yeah.
Yes. So eventually the event company took off. And so that was my first. So if the other one was my first experience in like, if you build it, they don't necessarily come. This experience was like, oh, this is how you find product market fit. And then everything else I didn't know. So all the mistakes were after product market fit at that point, which was hired all my best friends, couldn't spell P&L, had no network or operating system, and like we screwed it up. Eventually, because Run for Your Lives took off, it bought Warwear because it was buying shirts at three times the cost. And it was like, why don't we just buy this company and go from there? And so that eventually happened. But at the end of the day, unlike zombies, Run for Your Lives died. And it was a very painful lesson in in having the right people around you, making sure you understand the business model and the mechanics and what drives revenue and where expenses are. Because ultimately, that company scaled 0 to $6 million, $7 million in like 18 months, and then just demand flatlines. And it was a precarious situation because in the event world, you pre-sell tickets. And so when the company ran out of cash and couldn't pay anybody, we still had like 3 or 4 events for that season. And so it was just it was a very hard, tough lesson to learn.
Yeah. Okay. But obviously didn't put you off because you continued on your entrepreneurial journey and got into other things. What happened next?
Yeah. I mean, that's all part of the game. And that's one thing that I've learned like I could draw a line, and it's not a straight line by any stretch, but I could draw a line from like selling creepy crawlers to now being in the recruiting business. And so at that point, like, you know, when I think there was anxiety, there was panic attacks, there was depression, there was a lot of things that were happening kind of during that period and past the bankruptcy. And so I activated in the Navy. So at that point, I had gotten a commission and I transferred out to San Diego to drive ships for 4 years. And for about 2 or 3 years, like I was tinkering around with different things, different concepts. And ultimately, I had a business coach come to me, a mentor, and he was like, why are you trying to get into SaaS and business services? Like your background is events. Why don't you go do events again? And so who did I call? I called my former business partner, Derek, and I was like, hey, we had a good run at it. Unfortunately, we both lost our shirts, but we did something and we learned from it. Why don't we do it again? And so we launched Hunt to Killer about 3 years after the bankruptcy, and Hunt to Killer started off as a live event. We went to the first campground that we had the Run for Your Lives experience, and we transformed it into a living crime scene. And the only issue we had is we could put 15, 20,000 people through a Run for Your Lives event anywhere across the country in a weekend. With this, you couldn't have thousands of people standing around investigating a murder and interrogating suspects. And so we found product market fit, but we realized we didn't have the right business model. So about a week after that first event, we pivoted the company into subscription boxes. We were looking at Birchbox, Loot Crate, kind of all these subscription box companies. And what we wound up doing is taking that immersive murder mystery game, that murder mystery experience, putting it all in a box and delivering it to front doorsteps each month. And that was really the catalyst. I mean, after we made that pivot, we went from 0 to 55 million in 6 years. We wound up picking up Target, Walmart, Barnes and Noble. It took off, and it was a wild ride.
So, having learnt your lessons, I guess, from some of the previous businesses, what were the key things you did differently this time around?
There's a couple things. So once we realized we had product market fit, it allowed me to separate from active duty service into the reserves. And so I was about 15 years active duty at that point, transitioned into the reserves. First thing I did was I joined a peer group. What I wanted was like people that like I knew at that point kind of what not to do from like 0 to call it 5 million. But I knew that I was going to need help if we were able to scale the business past that. And so first thing I did was I joined the peer group. I learned some P&L, tips and tricks and what to look at and how money flows through. And I just had a lot of things that we did differently on that second run.
And I know that you are a fan and familiar with the EOS stuff. Did you use the EOS tools in the hunter killer business or?
We sure did. So I'm glad you asked that. EOS changed my life. And like now it's going to sound like an EOS infomercial, but it was transformational for me. The first thing is we joined the peer group, and then I just realized this. Oh, go ahead.
Which peer group did you join, by the way?
Vistage.
Vistage. Okay, great. Yeah.
Yep. I've been in Vistage for 8 years. I'm actually in EO
As
now as
well.
well.
Yeah.
So I'm doing Vistage and EO nowadays. So I had Dan Wallace on my podcast, and Dan and I were putting some pieces together of like timing and Vistage group and stuff. And Dan was like, dude, that was me. So my story goes, some EOS implementer came through, gave everybody a book. We did that exercise. And I was like, we need to self-implement this. And it was Dan Wallace that came through as a speaker in my Vistage group. And it was transformational. So we self-implemented for a couple of years, probably self-implemented from about 5 to 15, 20-ish million. And then we went out, Margaret Dixon out of Boulder, Colorado, hired her, and she took us the rest of the way.
And so what was it about? Because, I hear this story a lot where people either from Vistage or EO, whatever, they get hold of a traction book, they kind of go, oh, I need to do this. What was it that kind of hit you from that book that made you think, I need this?
So I went to the University of Maryland Business School for my undergrad, and I went through the typical, lessons and business 101 and having vision and understanding just basically like how business works. And so the thing for me is all of those concepts are easy. Usually it's like vision, mission, values. Here it's, core values and niche, and it's reworded, but it's all the same things. The thing that stuck out to me is all of these concepts that already exist and you're already like partially the way doing, but are completely disparate. Like everything's kind of happening in its own place. And you're not talking about the right things. You don't have the right people at the table. You don't understand like how people are being measured against the work that they do. And like EOS or reading traction was just like this aha moment of like, this is it. Like, this is all of the things that like businesses already do to a certain extent, but bringing it together in like a cohesive and easy to understand model and system. And so when I read it, I saw it, I knew this was just going to organize everything. And it did. It was game changing. It was life changing,
Yeah.
truly.
Yeah. No, I've heard that a few times. And I certainly know that when I came across the book. So my story was that EOS actually launched into New Zealand using my event center in Auckland. And I had been coaching for a number of years and, of course, running businesses like the event center. And couldn't attend their launch. I was busy at the time doing something with a customer. But anyway, they left a couple of books behind. And I remember I tried to read Traction, and I've said this a few times. I find it boring as batshit. So it was like, because I'm not necessarily, I actually used to love reading fiction. That was what I used to do as a kid. And so I read Get a Grip. And Get a Grip, I just read it, and I remember opening up, I read the first couple of pages, was completely consumed by it, read the whole thing in 2 hours and went, "Oh my god." Then I got hold of the Traction book and suddenly could read the Traction book because this was now the how-to book based on the Get a Grip story that we heard. So and it was for me, who had actually been working one of the top incubators in the world, doing coaching, running businesses, just brought everything together. And it was like, oh my goodness, this makes perfect sense. And like you said, nothing new, nothing revolutionary. There's nothing in there. Gino says it himself, nothing in there that he has created per se. It's all good, common business kind of concept, but bringing it together in a way that it works is what is the magic, I suppose.
That's exactly it. Exactly it.
Okay, so we've gone from bankruptcy, which I wouldn't wish upon my worst enemy, having sort of been through something similar myself, but to then creating Hunter Killer, which you managed to pivot, get the right business model, and exit it. How did you exit?
Yeah, we ran a kind of a very textbook process. So we went and we had an investment banking shop that we partnered with. We took 3 years. We took 3 months just kind of cleaning stuff up, putting together the sim, the teaser, all of those things. Went to market, contacted all the right people, and then it was probably maybe 7, 8-ish months into the process, we ultimately closed. We had enough horses in the race. Like Hunt a Killer did some, and this isn't me. Like I was not the game designer. I did not do like the brand. Like what I did is like set a vision and tried to get everybody inspired and motivated to go chase something big and something unique. And we were a very hot commodity because in the game space, very few games have a sell through like we had. Typically, what happens with games is they come on the market. They're kind of like books. They come on the market, they increase, 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 and then there's just this long tail. Well, Hunt a Killer was just growing, which was great. And so we had three horses in the race at the very end. We knew there was going to be some sort of transaction at that point. And then we ultimately sold to a company called What Do You Meme? They've rebranded as Relatable, but it's a New York City based toys and games company.
And so then I guess, so you've gone from, say, from that bankruptcy to suddenly having quite a successful sale. What did you do then? Did you sit there kind of twiddling your thumbs and going, "Oh, what am I gonna do?"
That's the Interestingly enough, I was activated again in the Navy. So one thing we didn't talk about is during the growth period of Hunt to Killer, I got a tap on the shoulder with Navy Reserves, and they were like, "Hey, you're going to deploy." So I deployed for 10 months and had to put a trusted integrator in place and really truly sit in a visionary seat
I
during the
truly
extent of
let
that
go.
10.
You had no choice, right?
No choice. Had no choice. And what was what was interesting is I was picked up for another program at the Naval War College. And so I got back from deployment. I spent about 6, 7 months getting my arms around the company and kind of figuring things out. And then ultimately activated again for 10 months in the Navy, but activated in Newport, Rhode Island, attending the Naval War College. And so when I sold, I was actually a student, a graduate student at the Naval War College. And and so I'd like to say like I took 6 months off, sort of. I mean, I was at the work, so like I was doing studying stuff, but sort of took some time off. And my Vistage chair had already come to me, and his name's Tom Leonard. I've since changed groups because I moved to LA, but Tom is still a near and dear friend and a personal coach of mine. And he pulled me aside and he was like, "Hey kid, you're not going to be able to sit still. You've got three horses in the race here, so you know there's going to be some sort of exit. Go look at your P&L right now and go pick your favorite line item. Think about think about what you could do in that space." So for me, it was people, the investment, development, coaching, mentoring, is everything people related. But we spent about $1 million on recruiting. And I was like, what a stupid industry. Like, never have I been to an event where someone's like, hey, I'm a recruiter. And you're not like, ugh. Like, there's just this like perception of they're recruiters are kind of like the used car salesman of business service. And what I saw is a tremendous opportunity to come out and be the CarMax. Like the reason that CarMax exists and launched in the 90s is because it was about bringing trust and transparency back to the used car buying process. And that's how we look at what we're doing. Like everything we do from our business model to our proven process to the people that we bring on the team, everything we do is different. And obviously we like to think it's better. But that's the whole thing. Like, saw an opportunity, and I said, let's go change the recruiting industry. Called the best recruiter we ever used at Hunt Killer, and I said, I'm going to launch a recruiting shop. And she was like, what? And then eventually she quit and joined me. Yeah.
And so that was around about 2 years ago, right? So Talent Harbour is the latest thing. And so that's actually, I think your Vistage mentor was pretty good at, yeah, it's a great way to look at it is like, what is it that really excites you in the current business? Because we often talk about, follow your passion and and money it just happens. But it's not about, I think people misinterpret that. They kind of think, well, I love photography, for example, so I need to go out and be a photographer and make money from it. No, that's my passion outside of work. It's like, what are you passionate about in the business? And I think that your Vistage mentor was just genius to say, what is it you're passionate about in the business? Because if you can get passionate about that in your next business, then you've got it nailed.
That's exactly it. And that's how that's how I looked at. And like I was asked a question last week. Is like how do I look at business, or is business my baby? And the problem with being passionate about the actual business, or treating the business as your baby, is it reduces, or at least it interrupts the ability for that human to be able to take the business where it needs to go. Like when business is a vehicle to accomplish something completely different, then you don't care when you go from creepy crawlers to t-shirts to this to that, because business is just a vehicle. Like my passion comes from solving really hard problems, making real significant change, and doing that at scale with brilliant people. And it doesn't matter if I'm doing zombie events or in the recruiting space. Like it's all the same.
Yeah, no, that's great. Hey, so I've got a couple of questions I want to ask you, and one of them is around the the peer group. So whenever I speak with clients, I always say, as an entrepreneur, you've got to have three things. You've got to have an operating system, a coach or a mentor, and then a peer group. And if you've got those three legs of the stool, you will definitely achieve whatever you want from your business. And I see, Vistage, you obviously been a member for a long time, but you're also a member of the Entrepreneurs Organization as well. What do you get from those peer groups? And what would you say is sort of what's the key thing you get from it? And what's the difference between the two for you?
When I think about peer groups, I actually think about peer groups in three different capacities. And I'm looking for candidly, I'm looking for three different types of peer groups. Number one is people that have been there, done that. They have leveled up, or they've gotten to where you want to go. And so those types of peer groups are about having that like motivation, inspiration, getting that extra push, and having them help you navigate the landmines that you're going to face as you're trying to get to where they are. The next peer group is really a peer group, meaning it's like it's your peers. They're exactly where you're at, they have to be just as ambitious because like everybody needs to kind of push each other. But the idea of that peer group is about accountability. So it's less about like, oh, there's a landmine coming up because typically they haven't seen that landmine yet. But the purpose of that group is to hold each other accountable to the things that we said we're going to do. And then the third type of peer group that I'm a part of is more of a mentor peer group, meaning that I am in a different place than where they are, and so it's really about kind of bestowing and talking about the challenges that I used to face and how I overcame them. And the purpose of that peer group is to reinforce the concepts so you don't lose sight or you don't forget the dumb mistakes that you made and be able to kind of repeat those. So long-winded, like I get something different from all three of them, but that's how I think about peer groups.
I love it. I think it's a great thing. So you've got those who've been there before, been there, done that, got the t-shirt. You got those that kind of hold you accountable, and that mentoring thing, which keeps you current in terms of what is, what you should be doing in your own business.
Yep.
Beautiful. Okay. My next question was really around the, because I'm really struggling a bit with this Navy entrepreneurialism. I mean, like, are they just like almost opposite ends of the spectrum?
They are. They probably couldn't be further apart. When you think about like bureaucracy, you think about like processes and systems and color within the lines and don't take risks. That's really the military. Now, granted, we do take a lot of risks, but we take risks that is in direct correlation with what we're trying to accomplish. So if we're training, then we will take very little risk. If we are actually operational, like our risk tolerance may increase based upon whatever outcome that we're trying to achieve. You look at entrepreneurship and it's just like there is no playbook. Is there EOS? Is there peer groups? Yes. The day to day, like what should I be focused on? Are we making the right decisions? All of those things are just kind of like you have to learn it. And there's no playbook, there's nobody there to tell you how to do it or how to make those decisions. And I think to a certain extent, like one of the reasons I've had such a hard time getting out of the military is because the military had such an outsized proportion on my life. Without the military, there would be no entrepreneurship. And the biggest reason for that is I probably would have gotten into trouble. I wouldn't have been able to find a way to like focus my energy. So the discipline and the resilience that came from the Navy, for me, it's about giving back. And so I find a lot of like purpose in the Navy as far as lives that I can change for young 17, 18, 19, 20-year olds, you know, just trying to pay it back because somebody did that for me. And then the entrepreneurship side, yeah, it's just I take some of those lessons. I take that resiliency with me, but it's completely different.
I think it actually kind of ties quite nicely into one of my favorite quotes by Jim Collins, where he talks about the magic occurs when you combine a spirit of entrepreneurialism with a culture of discipline. And I suppose in some respects, you've got the best of both worlds that support each other, that magic puzzle piece.
Yeah. I think so. And like one, I'm not a screamer. So I've dealt with many leaders in the military and like screamers are real. Like that's not stuff on TV. Like there are people that lead through like screaming in your face or just
Really?
telling you get it done. Oh my, oh my gosh. Yeah. Yeah. Especially the Marines, mostly the Marines, but still in the Navy. That's never been my approach. Like my approach has been care, empathy, and really trying to bring out the best in people. And I feel like if you focus on the people and their needs and their wants, then that will ultimately translate into the quality and productivity of their work. Um, but yeah, but we do hold people accountable. So like for us, it is very easy. It's not easy to run EOS, but for us, it is easier. There you go. To have the difficult conversations for sure.
So that, I don't want this to be an EOS advertorial, but I mean, what is your favorite EOS tool? Because I actually change regularly. I have these tools that come to the forefront because they're really relevant at the time. But what do you say has been your favorite tool in the EOS tool set?
Personally, I'm gonna have to go with the people analyzer. And one of the reasons for the people analyzer is like you can use it in recruiting, you can use it for vendors, you can use it for partners, you can use it for clients, there's just so many uses and it's just such a great guide to tell you like if something's not feeling right, run it through the people analyzer and see if that's why.
Yeah, I was just talking about this on a previous podcast. I love it because it takes the emotion out of it. But you're right, it can be used for lots of different things. And my really good buddy Scott Rusnak, I mean, he even uses it for his friends and family. it's,
I
it's
That's on brand for Scott.
It is. It is. He's hilarious. He really is. But it's great because, like you said, it's like he's very intentional about what he wants from his life, and he wants the people that are surrounding him to be the right people. So for him, they've got to be the right people in the right seats, even if it's a family role or a friendship role.
That's exactly right. I love it. I love it.
Cool. And so, in terms of if you think about what EOS did for your business, what was the biggest difference it made? And what
I,
and I'm
I
gonna ask a second part
yeah.
to it as well. What was the biggest mistake that you made?
Ooh, I've already got that one. I think what EOS does, like, it's accountability, and it like I think Gino Wickman always talked about, like, it's like the flashlight. Like, the reason for the light bulb is like it puts a light on folks and makes sure that everybody is held accountable to the same standards, to the things that they are supposed to complete. And that happens everything through like the data that you collect all the way to the rocks that you set and then the to do. So there's a lot of like accountability and structure in the process. I don't know if that's the biggest benefit. Where I see many companies fail is the lack of communication of like why we exist, where are we at today, how did we get here, and where are we going? And the VTO takes that message and like in black and white very easily just distills it down so everybody can understand. And so I would almost say like it's the distillation of those concepts that are generally held at the leadership team level and the ability to communicate throughout the entire organization.
Yeah, it is interesting. I was doing an annual planning session this week with a client, and they've got about 160 staff, and they've been doing EOS for, I suppose it must be a year if they're just under annual planning. And it's really fascinating to see. I mean, it made my heart sing sitting in the room, but they were talking about the fact that their people were actually on board with what they were trying to do. Everybody. It's a manufacturing business. We're talking about people who work in a production line, which is not, the most exciting work in the world, but they understand now that they're part of this bigger picture, which is about helping the Australian owners of the land and that kind of stuff. And it's enabled them to also bring into play things like EBITDA programs to teach staff about what EBITDA is and why it's important and what it can mean for them, because they understand the bigger picture, which means you can bring these not smaller concepts, but different concepts at a different level across the whole organization as well, because they understand how it fits in.
I I 100% agree. And like it does that at every because there were L10s, not just at the leadership team level, but at the departmental level. And at Hunt to Killer, we weren't very good at pushing it all the way down into the operations. And the reason for that is like we didn't really see a need to pull people off the floor for 90 minutes a week. And so we went into stand-ups and we had sort of a modified L10, but every single person in the company was meeting in some sort of EOS like capacity every single week. And it just makes that communication so much simpler.
Yeah, and I think that's the important thing. I mean, I always sort of say EOS is a framework, and it's, not every level 10 meeting has to be a 90-minute meeting. It's just about the structure of sharing good news, having some accountability, and most importantly, the opportunity to raise issues and get those issues solved, which is the key thing for it, I think. Okay, so my second part of the question, what was the biggest mistake you've ever made? And I can see you've already thought about
It's
this.
easy.
Yeah.
It's so easy.
Okay.
I'll give you the story, and then I think the story will tell our biggest mistake. So we self-implemented for probably about 2 or 3 years, and we used 90.io. So we at least had like a software that was kind of an engine powering all of these different things, and we thought we knew what we were doing. And we were like, what implementer? Like, why do we need an implementer? Like, we got this. And eventually we were like, okay, all right. Well, it just in order for me not to have to like lead the meeting and try and interject like ideas and things like that, we'll go get an implementer. And we walked in on the first day and Margaret Dixon was like, what the hell are you guys doing? And we thought we were pros. Like we were like, what are you talking about? This is EOS. We know what we're doing. We're experts at this. The It can't be minimized, the transition from nothing to self-implementation. Like, the company did a 180. There were so many things that happened that were incredible. We went through a whole nother transformation. So think the company is already like 100 times better than what it was without anything. And then we went through like an unbelievable second transition once we brought Margaret through the door. And so what was the biggest mistake? We waited way too long to bring an EOSI through the door. That's it.
Thank you very much for saying that. I really appreciate it. But yeah, but it is true. I mean, I don't know if you can see just behind me over here, those who can't see the video version of this, I've got a little, what do you call it, sketch that somebody did when I was doing my talk at the EOS conference, which is about, are you self-implementing or self-inflicting? And the self-inflicting term came from somebody who actually rang me up and said, hey, we've been sort of self-implementing EOS for a couple of years, but we think we've been self-inflicting it. And it's like, oh my God, that's a perfect term. And look, don't get me wrong, like self-implementing, like you said, is way better than doing nothing. And they've done a really, really good job in terms of changing the way the business operated. But what they were doing was not really pure EOS. And just by bringing in an implementer, we fine tune things. I'm a bit of a car nut, so I always use it to like, you've got this beautiful Ferrari, but you're not looking after it. You're not bringing it in for the pit stops. You're not making sure it's doing the right things. And so we just take the time to fine tune it so you can actually then go out there and really race.
That's it. Like, and there's so many, like, yes, it's an expert. Yes, they've done this 1,000 times. Yes, an EOS implementer has seen 1,000 things. There's also the other kind of like unspoken areas. Like number one, it brings a neutral third party in the room who's like looking at 10,000 feet and able to see a lot of blind spots that the people that are like doing this day to day, it can't see. That and being able to kind of hold the attention in a room and really let the visionary or the integrator, whoever was like self-implementing during these meetings, it allows them to be a part of the meeting, not trying to lead the meeting, which for me, like those are two different things.
Yeah, yeah. I just one of the things I've got some clients who've been working with me for years now because we always say we don't want to work with you forever. We want you to graduate and get on with it. But they just see the benefit of having that external party coming in. And as he said, one of the biggest benefits is you're freed up to actually participate. You don't have to worry about trying to keep everybody happy, trying to keep everything going, trying to take all the notes, and then it's good. Okay, so Talent Harbour. So it's been a couple of years now, and you went into it with the intention of shaking up the industry, doing things differently. How's it going?
It's going very quick. I would say we were kind of like 2 years would be like officially when we filed the LLC paperwork and things like that. We didn't really, because I was still at Naval War College. I was still running Hunt to Killer, and so it was like 6 months, probably June, July. Alana and I started taking it seriously. And then 6 months later, like once we really built the processes and understood our value proposition or our three unique, well, I don't think we still even understand our three uniques. That's a whole nother story. But at the end of the day, like we've really been doing this about a year and in this new business model and iterating on the process we have in place. And we are growing so fast. We're actually like exceeding our own expectations, which is a great place to be. And I just had this conversation. We were down in Colombia. We had this big company retreat, took everybody down, and we had a new teammate. And generally, we do new teammate onboardings virtually, but we had the opportunity to do it in real life. And he asked me, he said, "Hey, why do you think you're growing so fast?" And when you take a step back and you look at it, it's like the product is there. Like we are really, really good at what we do. When you think about kind of the marketing aspects, like we have a completely unique model that differentiates us from anybody else on the market. And then when you think about distribution, we've got an amazing podcast. We bring on EOS implementers. We talk about the EOS life, things like that. So we just have incredible strategic partners that we're aligned with, and it's just working. So yeah, that was a long-winded story, but it's going better than probably we could have expected.
Yeah, I think I'm a big sort of Dan Sullivan book fan, and also Dr. Benjamin Hardy as well. But the whole who not how thing is something that people sort of forget, and the 10 times is easier than 2 times. Like just thinking about things in a different way means that anything is possible, but we often get really blinkered because we've been told this should be done this way, or this is what's happened. So I think it's important to always be curious and always have an open mind. Okay, you've been through a journey. I mean, gosh, just listening to some of these stories, I'm sure there's many, many more you could share. But you've been through journeys of, I suppose, failing at school to having a business that did really well, to then going to bankruptcy, to then to another business and selling that and getting a lot of money for it, and now in a completely different area altogether, and still throughout all of that being in the Navy. For somebody, you must have some tips and tools you can share with people who are listening into this podcast. Like, what are the 3 most important things you would say to an entrepreneur listening into this?
So I wrote them down earlier, and as we were talking, because to me they're very easy. And here's the issue we're going to have as I say these three. It's just going to be a readback on something that you already said. because these are the three things that you believe in. And I swear to you, I'll show you the paper. Like, these are the three things I wrote down. One, you need some sort of operating system, some sort of framework to be able to run, manage, and operate the business on a day-to-day basis. Obviously, EOS is the elephant in the room, and it's the biggest, and to me, it's the best one. But business owners need to understand that, like, there are systems and frameworks that exist that will help you manage the business. Number two, we talked about this as well. It's a peer group. Like, having folks that you can rely upon, that you can share your deepest, darkest secrets, you can get vulnerable with. They can share what's worked for them. They can hold you accountable. You can reinforce your concepts. Like, peer groups in EOS are really were the life changers for me.
Yeah. Hey, just want to go a little bit into that as well, because I've been a member of EO for sort of 3.5 years now. I work with the EO as a strategic alliance partner. But I think one of the things that people forget too is, like, because you're married, you've got children, etc. It's really hard to go home and have those conversations with your partner, with your husband, with your wife, whatever it might be. And it's not the person you should be having those conversations with either.
No, no. Like, like, you should, what is it? Like, you're the one that's doing it. And so letting everybody else in on the stress, like that, to me, that feels like the entrepreneurs to own. And I agree with you. Like, one of the things that I don't think gets talked about enough is, like, entrepreneurship is a very lonely path. There's all these things out here where it's like a sexy thing. You have Steve Jobs and, all these people that have come before and made the headlines. The reality is, it's one of the most lonely gigs on the planet, because your team, they can be like family, and you can be close and empathetic and help them succeed, but they're not your best friends. Like, they're not there to listen to your business problems. Like, you're there to solve them and have them help in whatever you're trying to accomplish. So, not to
Peer
piggyback on
groups.
that, but
Yeah.
yeah, that's it.
Perfect. Yep.
And then you already said the last one too. I mean, these were the three that you said, but it's a business coach. You know, with Vistage, it's installed. So when you join Vistage and you're in a CE group, like, the chair is a trained business coach. And so you get the added benefit of a business coach and a peer group kind of simultaneous. EO is kind of self-led or peer-led. And so there's no installed coach. And I think just having someone that for, call it 60 to 90 minutes a month, you can sit down with and express to them what's happening, and have them help guide you from a coaching standpoint. And the best coaches are the ones that are brutally honest. Like, my business coach will say the most direct things to me, and, like, I'm like, I can't believe that and then he's right. And then I'm like, okay. And so, and what a good business coach really does is hold a mirror up to you. And sometimes you just don't like what you see. But yeah, those are the three, but you already talked about all three.
But that's great. I mean, as I said, nothing that we talk about is necessarily new or revolutionary. Just like EOS, it's just tried and tested. And I know, I'm 55 years old. I have been through the ups and downs of business. I've been through a liquidation. I've been through the success stuff. And the reality is that it's if you get the basics right, then it works. And they're the basics. Yeah. Those three things are the things that will actually help you succeed. I can speak from experience.
I
Yeah.
agree. I agree.
Beautiful. Okay, well, look, I have no doubt we could probably talk all day, but that's been really helpful. It's been really interesting to hear kind of your journey through all of this, and to get your top tips and tools. You have got that podcast, which is the Confessions of an EOS which is out there, and Talent Harbour will make sure that your details and things are in the podcast as people can find you. You've also got a website, which is interesting. And I guess the one last thing, so that you've got your own personal website, which is ryanehogan.com. And of course, I had to hop on there just before he came on board and saw one of my favorite movies is The Martian. So let's just quickly tell me a little bit about The Martian before we sign off.
Yeah, I'm like a big space geek. So, like, Apollo 13, The Martian. I mean, you name it. I love these movies where they go out into space and chart new territories. Interstellar, that's another great one. Although that concept is less about going into space, more about the family stuff. But the thing about The Martian, it was the very end. And as Matt Damon is talking to a class, what he says is, you solve one problem, then you solve the next problem, then you solve the next problem. And if you solve enough problems, you get to come home. And that's what I used to talk to my team about constantly. Because, like, from the outside looking in, Hunt to Killer was a great success. We did 205 million over 6 years, and we had an exit. Like, all the when you're growing a company that fast, everything at all times is always on fire. Like there is always issues, and they are big, hairy issues. And so what I used to talk to my team about is like we need to be able to prioritize and solve the right problems. In Apollo 13, I've like space movies for decades. In Apollo 13, he talks about you're focused on problem 4,322, and we need to be focused on problem number one. And these were the concepts that I used to talk to about my team when we were facing real challenges. Is like this is our job, is to solve problems and to solve them in the right order and focus on them. And if we solve enough problems, we get to go home. And that was basically that was my message.
I love it. Absolutely love it. Okay, look, thank you so much. I know
Yeah,
I have the big
thanks,
grin on
Deborah.
my face. Really enjoyed other conversations, taken lots of learnings myself, which I think you always do when you're talking to people. Hope the listeners have enjoyed listening to you. Thank you for sharing.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Deborah. Appreciate it.
My pleasure.